Hey everyone, this is Brian Barczyk from BHB Reptiles and Snake Bites TV. You're listening to the Herp Herpere Show.
It says here we should work in teams. I tend to think of myself as a one-man wolf pack.
You are about to enter Information Overload, a worldwide transmission with Herp Herpere's featured Breeder of the Week. Here's your host, Jason Rossi.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening on this episode of Herp Herpere. I'm your guest host, Sean Bradley, and I'm filling in for Jason Rossi. This is the first episode of 2013, and anybody can listen in on this podcast for free on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or RossiReptiles.com. This is going to be part one of a three-part series. In this first part, I'll be interviewing the person that I think I influenced the most in this business, and that's Tim Bailey of Bailey & Bailey Reptiles. The second part, I'll be interviewing the person who influenced me the most, and that's Brian Barczyk of BHB Enterprises. And finally, for the third part, I'll be collecting various questions from you guys, the listeners, about the business, such as business practices, maybe safe shipping methods, anything that you really want to know about what it takes to be a successful reptile keeper, breeder, business person, and make this hobby everything that you want to make it. So if you can, as you listen to this and the next podcast from us, think of questions you'd like me to answer, and if you want to email me, it's Sean, S-E-A-N, at exoticsbynature.com, or you can catch up with me on Facebook. I'm just on there under my name. It's Sean Bradley, and again, that's S-E-A-N, and you can check me out on Facebook, message them to me there, and we'll get them answered as best we can. So I guess without further ado, I'd like to welcome Tim to Herp Herpere. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, everybody. What's going on?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, it's great to have you on the show, Tim. I know this is probably, I think, your first time doing a Herp Herpere podcast,
yeah.
And it reaches out to a lot of people. And to all those people out there, I'd really like to start by saying that Tim began building his ball python collection back in 2003. And I'm really proud to say that his collection's grown, come really close to the size of our stuff over here at Exotics by Nature. And I guess let me ask you this, Tim, since I'm sure a lot of people would like to know, what got you interested in ball python mutations back in the day?
Well, growing up as a kid, I always had a bunch of snakes, lizards, iguanas, all kind of stuff when I was a kid. But I'd gotten out of it for quite a while. I actually had Mexican black king snake that I had for about 5 or 6 years maybe. And I went to boot camp in the Marine Corps back in 95, and when I went, I got rid of that last snake. So I was a reptilist from 95 until 2002, actually. And in 2002, my daughter caught a little water turtle, a red ear slider. I got a big bass pond in my front yard, and she caught that little turtle, and we put it in a tank, and we never could get it to eat really well, so it lasted about 2 or 3 months and died. Excuse me. And when that happened, she decided she wanted a snake, and Monica, my wife, had seen on the way home a sign for Exotic Reptiles, which was actually Sean's shop, was on our normal travel coming home. So we went over there to look for a snake, and Shelby dug around a little bit. I guess back in 2002, Shelby would have been 4 years old. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, Shelby would have been 4, maybe 5 years old when we started looking. And she decided she didn't want a snake, but Sean had a bunch of bearded dragons there, so we ended up getting, actually we didn't get a baby. I think Sean had a sub-adult male bearded dragon that we got set up at home, and he did great, and Shelby liked him a good bit. But, as you know, anyone that's got beardies, you got to feed it crickets. So once a week I was in Sean's shop buying crickets for the for the Bearded Dragon, and I guess around that time, 2002, Sean was getting heavy into the ball pythons, and so you had quite a bit of stuff back then. I remember the Spider and the Pied and Hypo.
Yeah, we were spending a lot of money right then.
Yeah, G-stripes and all that stuff. So there's piquing my interest again back in snakes, looking at all that stuff, and realizing that there was some really cool stuff. And as when I was doing it as a kid, I was never really part of a group of people that did it. So it was just kind of, I got a snake on my own, did it, and I didn't even, back then, I didn't even think about breeding. I just wanted to keep cool snakes and cool lizards and stuff as pets. So when I figured out you could breed them, I thought that'd be interesting. So yeah, I just started digging. Of course, back in 2002, anyone that was around back then, there wasn't anywhere near as much stuff on the internet as there is now. I mean, pretty much you'd go to Ralph Davis's site, because Ralph had a message board on there, and you could go to King Snake and Fauna, and that was about it. So I'd just run around, free time at work, free time at home, dig, research, study, learn whatever I could, and there was always, I don't know, probably 5, 6, 7, or 8 people or so that were kind of really the close-knit group there at Sean's shop, and there was always probably 1 or 2 of those guys running around in there. So I was always in the shop once a week getting crickets, and just started asking Sean questions, and Scott and Robin and any of the guys that were in the shop and were regulars over there, and just after talking and looking and researching, and I figured it was something we wanted to do. So that's when the leap started. Of course, we'd had the Bearded Dragon probably for maybe 6-9 months or so before we decided to start with the ball python stuff. Of course, plenty of questions prior to that as well, but that's kind of how we evolved into that. I guess it was looking at Sean's collection and what he was doing there that got me back into it.
Well, it's kind of funny. I think you're being a little modest there. You came in the shop one day to get crickets, and we were talking about ball python morphs, and then you came in the shop maybe a week or 2 later, and it seemed like you knew everything. I mean, you must have got on the internet and, like you said, and did that research, and really kind of caught the fever. I think that most people have caught with reptiles, not only just ball pythons, but I mean, it's so easy. And if you think about it, then we're only talking about 10, 15 mutations, not 100, 120, or some god-awful amount of different mutations that you can really get into, now. But I guess, thanks for sharing that with us. It's a great story that you and I remember fondly. I know we talk about it sometimes, and I mean, I guess we all get started in our own way, but I was happy to be able to influence you so early on, and get you interested, so much. So I guess it's really taken you ahead, in the business and in your hobby. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, maybe how many animals are you working with? I mean, what's your collection size in the way of maybe adult breeders, and if you don't mind sharing, maybe clutch amounts, and how many babies you hatch every year, and things like that.
Yeah, well, I'll back up just a hair. Back to the previous question. So in 2003, when we started building, I bought at that time. Sean was still importing, captive hatch animals every year. So I went in, I bought a captive hatch female, which, of course, there again, more direction from Sean. Hey, if you're going to get something, get a female. So we got one, and I guess it wasn't too much long after that. We had a local show in Slidell, and Sean was over at the show, and of course, being that I was freshly into it, decided to go to the show and talk to wife into letting me get another one. So I picked up another female from Sean at the show, which was actually in 2002. It was a year-old female that he had left from 2002 captive hatch stuff, and got that girl. And then we found out we were getting deployed. I was getting deployed to Afghanistan shortly thereafter. So Monica said, hey, we got to grow females up. Hey, why don't you get one more? So before I went to Afghanistan at the end of 2003, I ended up picking up another female from Sean. So I started out with 3 normal females, and went to Afghanistan, and of course, was making really good money over there. So I came back in 2004 to a big pile of money, and went to Sean's, and bought the bulk of what I bought in 2004 from Sean. I picked up a few animals, I think, from Brian Barchak, because Sean had introduced them to me that year in Daytona. I got a couple things from Brian. But I think we ended up in 04 with about 20 animals. And, of course, I knew I was getting redeployed again at the end of 04, so I didn't want to get too many because Monica was going to have to take care of all that stuff on her own while I was gone. So we ended up with about 20. And, I mean, that year, we picked up an albino male and a het female, a hypo male and a het female, a pair of pastels, I think a pair of het pieds, an axanthic male and a het axanthic female, and I think maybe another couple of normals that year. We ended up with about 20 snakes at that time. And of course, back then that was probably about $15,000 or so that we spent to get that, which is nowhere near what it is today. So left in 04, went back to Afghanistan, came back with another big pile of money, and started buying stuff again in 2005. So that's kind of how the collection progressed there at the beginning, and of course then it just continued to get bigger from there. So to the question you just asked, right now actually over the holidays, actually on New Year's Day, I didn't have much to do. So I went out, I started breeding late compared to a lot of other people. A lot of people start breeding in October. I really don't start heavy breeding until January, and it doesn't really get heavy until about February. But I went out to start making the breeding plans. So I actually, when I wrote everything down and looked at it this year, we've got 81 males that will be breeding this year. And then we've got a few more that we're growing up. But I got 81 males will be in the breeding program this year. And I've got about about 215 females that we'll have in the breeding program this year. Those are all in adult racks, and I say that there's probably a handful, about 5 or 6 of them that are still a little small that we probably won't try this year. And then, of course, we're still growing. So I'm out of space right now. I've got some females in hatchling tubs, and some people probably get a little shocked when they hear it, but I've got some 12 and 1,300-gram females in ARS hatchling tubs that need to be moved up, but I don't have any space. We're working on that. But, if I can get those moved up, I may actually even end up being able to breed some of those late in the season. And late, I mean May, June, July, somewhere around there. And if I lump those girls in, then I'm sitting at probably about 240 females and 81 males.
Wow.
But, I do still have, in some of these numbers of males and some of those females that I just talked about in ARS hatching racks. But I've got 2 ARS racks that are pretty much full of grow-up stuff. So about another 150 animals, minus some of the ones I just talked about. So probably about another 100 animals past that growing up. So I would put our personal ball python collection, not including stuff that's available or for sale, but just ball python collection today is probably right around 400 animals.
Okay. Well, it seems like you certainly got it growing up. It's, it's interesting every year. I think all of us that are already producing snakes, it's hard to go through your own production and sell off the stuff you work so hard to produce.
Right.
When you can save it back, man, I could really use this female. I could really do something with this male, and then you have a reptile show, or you go to your friend's place and you check out his snakes. I'll be honest, before I got injured, I was going over to Tim's house probably once a week, and in this hatching season when he's hatching snakes, I'm over there seeing these things, and I can't leave there without saying, man, I really want to get that from you, or I really want to get this. And he'd come over to my place and do the same thing. And at the end of the year, we end up trading back and forth or buying and selling to each other. And oh, man, we end up taking on an extra 20, 30 animals sometimes just between the two of us. And, it really gets to adding up fast. And I guess we'll touch on that in a minute. But I'd like to touch on a couple other things before we go into the size of facilities or, how you're housing your stuff. But, we really want to focus on what is making you successful in this, hobby, in this business. And, so if you wouldn't mind sharing a few of the top things that you did to contribute to your success of producing ball pythons. Not business related, but just production alone. I mean, is there anything you'd really like to mention?
I don't know that there's anything really in particular I could go into. I mean, I will say, and this kind of touches a little bit back on the first question again, but it was really helpful having you around. And it started out at me stopping at the shop once a week to pick up crickets, and probably before the shop closed down evolved into me stopping damn near 5 days a week at the shop. I mean, on the way home from work, it was hard to drive by the shop and see a bunch of cars over there and notice 3 or 4 or 5 cars of people I knew sitting over there and not want to run in there and, oh, man, I'm just going to stay for 15 minutes, tell everybody hello. And then an hour and a half later, Monica's calling me, telling me dinner's ready and where am I at. And, it was a huge help for me, I think, to get a lot of pointers and to watch you doing it, see what you were doing. And I got to watch that for a good 2 years before I ever tried my first hand at production and breeding. So, I gained a lot of experience from being able to watch, which I know nowadays a lot of people don't, and obviously at this point I've got some customers that I'm mentoring, but, it's to the point they just call me twice a week and I got to talk to them, I got to talk them through it. And it's really still somewhat difficult to do that because I get a customer call and say, okay, man, it's my first year breeding, and all right, this girl just ovulated, and they're all excited, and so they're getting ready for everything. And man, I need to set up, my incubation medium. How do I do it? I talked some people through it, but it was easy when I had that question. I just went over to your shop and said, hey, dude, let me watch you mix up some media. And Sean say, oh, hey, you need to, put this vermiculite and put that perlite in there and put this much water and feel this and squeeze this. Okay, you squeeze it. You feel that? You see how that feels? You see how wet? And, it was easy. It was hands-on for me. So it was, I can attribute a lot of my initial success to being able to have hands-on and have you help so much with how all of that stuff, came to be. But then, from there, a lot of it was trial and error on your own, and, a lot of it at the beginning, and I've gotten away from it now, and I think people, as they grow, get away from paying attention to their collection as much as they used to, and some of that is just inherent in the fact that if you continue to grow, you can't put hands on particular animals like you used to. But I tell a lot of my customers now and guys that are trying to learn is, hey, what next? And I'm like, man, you'd be amazed at how much you can learn and how much you can teach yourself just from paying attention to your animals. Your animals will talk to you, and they'll tell you what you need to do. They'll tell you
yes, indeed.
They're too hot, or they're too cold, or they're hungry, or they're not hungry, or they're bull wrapping, or they're cool seeking. Or, if you watch an animal enough and you notice that all of a sudden something, whatever it is, changes. She cruises the tub more. He cruises the tub more. Well, something's going on there. Just stop a minute and think about it. Think about why they're doing that or what may possibly be the trigger for that. And then I tell, a lot of people, too, is, hey, go do, dig. It's not readily available, but you can find it. It's out there. Go look at some of the things, like Stefan. I know Stefan's got some videos and stuff from Africa. Brogheimer. Go look at some of his videos, or go try to read a little bit about where and not just ball pythons, but whatever species you're working with. Go learn a little bit about that area and temperatures, and that stuff can help you to determine what you think you need to do with your animals in your collection.
Right.
Because it's all about trying to replicate their natural environment. We haven't removed ball pythons from the wild that far after millions of years of evolution that they're still going to want to operate in something that's similar to what their bodies have evolved into. So, paying attention is a real big thing. But there again, I mean, you've experienced it, and people that have grown too, is you find that it doesn't take as much time of observation as it did when you were smaller. You needed to observe more to learn more when you were smaller, and you had the time to do it. Now you don't have the time to do it, but you've got all the experience already built in. So, I mean, you can walk in once a week and look at your animals. Just spend 10, 15 minutes in there. I can look down the aisle and see a bunch of females pressed up to the front of the tub that they used to not be and know what's going on. Or, so you don't have to pay as close attention, I don't think, because you pick up on subtle cues a little bit easier once that experience builds up. But,
yeah, if you remember Mark Mandick from Marcus Jane Reptiles, he had and maybe still has on his website, an entire page just on the basic stuff, like this female's cool seeking, she's bull wrapping, she's glowing, and all of this stuff. Meanwhile, there's people using ultrasound machines to try to figure out their collections, and I'm guilty of that, and it's been a good tool for me. But at the same time, here's Mark up there doing absolutely nothing with technology like that, just watching his animals and learning the way that they look and stuff like that, But, another thing, too, on this same question is caging and things like that. It's so expensive and everything. And, I was building stuff, and I think you kind of took hold of that, mentality as well, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Well, so, obviously, back in 03, 04, when I was building the collection, and a lot of people getting in now, or that are starting up now, are in the same boat I was then, and I can't say that we ever really get out of that boat completely, but I would much rather take $3,000 and buy 10 snakes and build my own cage than buy one cage and be out the $3,000 and have to go buy animals. So
like a rack system or something like that, $3,000 for a rack that holds 30 ball pythons. How much do you think you spent on a rack to build your own for 30 ball pythons roundabout?
Maybe $1,000, and that was including heat tape, thermostat, and tubs, and all the materials and building and everything. $1,000 maximum, and I had 30 tubs. So that gave me $2,000 I could go buy snakes with.
Right, because, hey, let's face it, back then, $3,000 for a rack and $15,000 for a spider ball or $25,000 for a pinstripe. You weren't getting that far. But these days, it's still $3,000 for a rack and $200 for a spider ball or $250 for a pinstripe or something like that. So it really goes a long way.
No, and that was another one of those things that was really great for me being hands-on, because I remember, I came to Sean. Sean was building his racks, and if I'm not mistaken, the rack design was actually Sean's cousin Mark, that used to do a lot more, still does work with Sean, and I think is one of the guys that helped Sean get into it, because Mark's been doing reptiles forever. But I think that rack was Mark's original design. But Sean had them, so I went over there, got all my measurements, everything I needed, built my first rack, and actually put the rack in the back of my truck, drove it to Sean's shop, and plopped it on the floor in there, and had Sean help me run through, how to wire up and solder up the flex watt and do all that stuff. I remember sitting in the middle of the floor and having Sean help me with that first one. So after that one, it was all downhill. It was build them as fast as you can build them at that point. And then I talked to Sean, and of course we do this all the time, and the two of us joke about it all the time. Sean always, I'm pretty hard-headed, and Sean will always say, hey, here's the deal. And of course, I don't believe it. Sean will say, if you run into that brick wall head first, it's going to hurt, and I got to go do it myself to find out. But I asked Sean, hey, how come you haven't put this rack design on the website? Well, I've learned since then why. Because I went ahead and put a how-to on my website, which has been helpful to numerous people. I get emails all the time about people telling me, hey, thanks for the how-to and the DIY. It was great. I built a rack and I love it and it's good. But the downside to that is I probably get 100 emails asking me about this, and even as detailed as the instruction is, it's still a little bit of a hassle sometimes getting those emails. But hey, it's helping the next generation. So I don't mind going through it. But those racks were a tremendous help. And of course, I've watched Sean get rid of a lot of his homemade racks and upgrade over the years, and I've slowly been doing it myself. But it's definitely a great thing for starting, and helps you to save a bunch of money as long as you're decent with a saw and a drill. Then you can build your own rack, and I'm still I've got one actual purchased pro grade rack in my adult room. And that's the one that me and you keep our blood pythons in, just because, you know, it's a giant tub and it was just way easier to buy that rack than to build it. But all of my adult ball pythons are in homemade racks of one kind or another. Either the homemade CB70s we used to make out of 2x2s, or my adult males are in 28-quart racks that, you know, we evolved over the years, and Sean evolved first and taught me, but, you know, using expanded PVC. It's a really
right.
good material to work with and super lightweight, and we built.
Right. We started getting rid of the wood a few years after you were making yours. I stopped making them out of wood and started working with that same PVC that a few of the other commercial companies are using. But again, it's expensive material, but if you have the tools and if you have the knowledge, you can build them for pennies on the dollar compared to what you can buy the stuff for. So
yeah, I mean, you know, as opposed to, hey, like you said, you know, $3,000 for a pro grade rack that holds 30 adult females. That's $100 a tub. You know, and we're probably building some of those for $25 to $30 a tub. So it's a dramatic decrease in what you can pay to house a snake, because you know.
Right, and house it to the same quality of life. I mean, again, the durability's not there. You know, if you climb in your racks like a monkey, or if you're, you know, banging them around on wheels and rolling them outside and hosing them off and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, aluminum or plastic powder-coated steel, those racks can be more durable than wood, but
oh, for sure.
You know, it's still a cost issue for a lot of people that are starting out.
That's it. Yeah, but with that said, you know, I know me and you have talked about it a good bit too as well. And as you get bigger, for whatever reason, I mean, there's reasons we could talk for hours on it, but you know, it seems that the cost for you to produce a ball python increases. So, you know, let's just say for a round even number, it costs you $100 to make a ball python. Well, if you already started out with a $100 tub to hold that female, I mean, it's already going to take you that much longer to recoup your money if you want to factor in everything in there than if you're starting out with a tub that costs you $30 to grow that female up.
Right. Well, you know, I mean, I kind of, we were getting on that question. I really wanted to address that question for those people out there that are interested in having a larger collection of ball pythons and not so much getting into the business of breeding them. But as we all know, having this hobby, it's the only hobby I've ever had that I've made money at. It's the only hobby I've ever had that I've broken even, you know, with it financially. You know, boats, cars, whatever else.
I've seen
some
of those come and go.
Yeah, we all seem to lose some serious cash on our hobbies, you know. But I mean, this is a hobby that can pay itself. You know, you can make enough money off of it to feed your animals. You know, producing baby ball pythons and even bringing them to your local pet shop and trading them for a credit for rats or mice or heat tape or caging accessories or, you know, whatever you need. Hey, even more different species of reptiles to expand your collection to get some diversity and things like that. But I guess let's move on a little bit for those that are interested in a little bit of the business side of things. You know, so after all of the husbandry and production is understood and you get yourself a good handle on what it takes to make a snake, you know, to put two snakes in a cage together, get them to breed, hatch the eggs, all that stuff, you end up with a bunch of baby snakes. And, you know, while there can be a lot of mouths to feed, you know, if somebody's ready to start a business of selling the reptiles that they produce, what advice do you have to share with a newcomer?
That's an interesting question, and you know, I think that, and I'm one that's semi-old school. You've actually helped me immensely, pushed me in some directions. You know, I think that question right there has even evolved a good bit since I started to today. I think one of the best things for someone to do, and I know you and I have a pretty good handle on it, but get as well known as you can locally, because me and you both have a pretty big name locally in our area and move a lot of animals. And man, it's just really easy to move an animal locally. There's no shipping involved. Someone can call you. They can come to your facility. You can meet them somewhere if it's a new customer and you don't know them. But moving stuff locally is easy, and word of mouth is just great from that aspect. So do some local shows. As many local shows as you can. It may cost you a little bit of money up front at the beginning because you may buy a table and go to the show and not sell anything. But making that local name, I think, is great. And, where I said that's evolved a little bit, that's still a great starting point now. The funny thing about all that is I remember the first show that I ever vended at was Tinley Park, MARBC.
All the way up in Chicago, Illinois. That's far from a local show.
Seems completely backwards, but, where the evolution there comes in, I think my first Chicago show was in 2006. So, back in 2006, there weren't near as many local people here doing snakes as there are today. So it was a little harder. Today's a different story. Local's a great place to start. Back then, we could do something local, but there wasn't that much. Back then,
right.
In my opinion,
and the prices were higher.
Yeah, you had to have a really good name in the contiguous U.S. to do something, and what better place to do it in Tinley? So I went all out, spent a shit pile of money, and went all the way up to Tinley Park to do something. And I think that was a great benefit for me. Of course, nowadays, a newcomer trying to go do Tinley now is probably almost impossible because you're going to be on a...
Yeah, you're learning how to swim in the ocean instead of learning how to swim in a pool. That's a different, that's a completely different set of circumstances there.
Right. But, and then, going back to pre the evolution of what I'm talking about, and it's still a good thing to do now, is, I spent a lot of time on some of the newer sites after they started coming out in 05, 06, BP.net and BLBC and, a bunch of the little reptile forums that started popping up all over the place. And I don't want to say pick one, but try to focus on one a little bit more because I know, even today now I'm so strung out in every different direction I hardly get to the forums like I used to and like I would like to. But, just rolling up your sleeves and helping people, I think does huge things for your name. People will realize, hey, this guy isn't just, and we see it and hear it all the time nowadays is so-and-so's all about the money. Any of us that are trying to run a business or have something that's a larger endeavor, there's no way they're going to say they don't care about the money. You have to be able to run your organization. But at the same time, helping people and giving help to these people will let them see that you truly care about the animals and you're trying to help those people. And with your business will grow when that happens. So that's a big way to get your name out there. Advertising these days on forums is relatively cheap and relatively easy. That's another good thing to do. But, one place, and that's what I was kind of hitting on at the beginning of my talk there, was I'm a little old school and slow to move in different directions, but there's so many avenues nowadays. And Sean probably told me for, 2 years to get on Facebook. And I never would do it. And the industry is giant on Facebook now.
Yeah, it's funny how it's migrated to Facebook, Yeah, I'm sure that Zuckerberg would be interested in how much transactions occur between auctions and ads and just word of mouth. And
it's as simple as I get excited because I produce a cool clutch or whatever, and I'm excited, just want to share it. So I go post a picture on Facebook and show someone, hey, here's some cool stuff I just hatched, and next thing you know, you got a freaking sale. So the world of auctions now on Facebook is unbelievable. I mean, yourself, you just started to get into that here not too long ago, but Facebook. Yeah,
and it's funny that you talked about locals. I just want to say this: of all the auctions that I had, I think I only shipped off 2 customers. Everybody else was local. Everybody else was local followers, friends on Facebook from New Orleans or Baton Rouge, these people are within an hour of our operations, and they're on Facebook bidding on our auction animals, and we know them all. They're all friends.
Oh,
you know?
Hey,
so,
tight one second. I'm having an issue here with my other phone.
All right.
I got the business phone ringing. I can't hear anything. It's making a bunch of racket.
Yeah. Oh, you could probably edit this out anyway.
Oh, yeah. But, so, Facebook is huge, but, yeah, I really think the best thing, and there again, it goes back, 2006. I mean, and I haven't been in it near as long as you've been in it. But I definitely remember, back in 2002, 2003, you could probably, if you sat down long enough, for a half an hour and got a piece of paper, you could probably write down just about every breeder that had anything sizable in a collection. Nowadays, you can't. There's, that's the reason that there's so many animals available, is all those people back in when you started in 98 and 97 and 99 that were buying ball pythons were selling to the next generation, the next and the next and the next. And here we are 15, 20 years removed from that, and there's thousands of people. So,
right.
Back when you got me hooked, I mean, even then there was only a handful of people that had, ball python mutations in our area that we knew of. Now we're selling them all the freaking time. So today, in this day and age, when you get to breeding, I think the best thing you can do is, become a member of your local herp society if you can find one. Find the closest local show to you and start vending, even if you only have a few animals. Let those people see your face, talk to them, roll your sleeves up, help them, let them see you, and do as much stuff as you can locally, because it's a great place to move your animals, especially when you're starting out and you have, 6 clutches of snakes and, you got 40 animals maybe. And, find a couple of pet shops you can sell your normals to, and then find some local people that you can do some trading with, that you can sell some stuff to, and then you're not stuck. You're going to, we got a local show, semi-local, not this coming weekend after that I'm going to go to. And, I'm going to drive up there, and it's probably going to cost me, with hotel room and tables and gas and all that, $400 to go do that show. No big deal. Way better than trying to do Chicago that cost you and me $3,000 each to go do that show. Well, if you're a small guy with 30 snakes, spending $3,000 to go do a big show is just not necessarily affordable. The right thing to do.
Now, in the way of, let me just stop you right there real quick. In the way of $3,000 for one of those big shows, let's just entail that that's not a table fee, but that's hotels, that's travel expenses, that's gas, that's food, that's the table fee, is probably, for 2 tables is probably $700 to $800. But, you have a lot of expenses that you don't consider, and, that comes right off the top of your profits.
Oh, yeah. I mean, me and you, it's 14.5-hour drive for us to get to Chicago. For a while there, me and you had bought a trailer, and we were trailering and doing the shows together. So pulling a trailer behind a Yukon with two different displays, 4 tables worth of stuff, I mean, it probably cost us $600 in gas to get there and back.
Yeah.
Plus your $800 table, and then we leave early and leave late, and so you got 4 days of hotel rooms and food, and so I mean that stuff adds up. Yeah, it's not $3,000 for a table, but yeah, it's $3,000 to go do that show. So the first $3,000 of snakes I sell, all I'm doing is breaking even.
Right. Well, that's really all great information. Talking about the websites, local shows, forums, Facebook, things like that. But I started out as a pet store, so I started out, as an incorporated business, filing a lot of tax returns and having accountants because I had employees with payroll taxes and things like that. A lot of things to consider. But when you started Bailey & Bailey Reptiles, you didn't have such a large, I guess, corporate presence as far as the books were concerned. But it is important to become a viable legal business when it comes to this, because we're never going to be considered as an industry with a future by the feds, the government officials, and make the laws about snakes, by your local municipalities that tell you what exotic pets you're allowed to keep and breed on your land if you live in a neighborhood, a subdivision, anything like that. Even if you live in the country with free land, you still have county laws that you have to abide by. So, if you wouldn't mind touching on this briefly, what legal steps were involved in you, making Bailey and Bailey Reptiles a real business entity?
Sure, and well, I didn't have the pet store and I didn't have the pet shop and all that, but and it was easier for me, and this goes back to some previous discussion we had, but it was easier for me because, Sean, you knew a lot of that stuff. So I could ask you, hey, what's legal here? What's the laws? But, there again, a local herpetological society is a great place to start with finding out what you legally can and can't have. Because you definitely want to stay within those bounds, and it's getting even more prevalent these days than back then, but we're seeing all kinds of laws popping up all over the place, and so when we see stories, people put them on Facebook or they put them on one of the forums that you go to, and you see all these idiots and people that make a bad name for us, and it's a handful out of a large group that are giving us some egg in our face that we don't need. So you definitely want to ensure that you're within what all legalities are set in your township or your area or your county or parish or state or whatever. But from there, actually, I did set up an LLC for Bailey and Bailey Reptiles before I sold my first snake and before I had the website up.
That was really responsible of you to do. I mean, I think that's probably a lot further than most people can and are willing to do just to get started. But at some point, we gotta kind of do this type of stuff. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I probably didn't have to do it that way. And I know a lot of people probably still operate it as a hobby before they get that. But in reality, I haven't looked into any other states because we live in Louisiana, so that's what I looked at. But I can't imagine getting an LLC set up in any other state is much more expensive or difficult than Louisiana.
Actually, it's probably easier since we have parishes instead of counties, and we're still under Napoleonic law here. We're the only state in the union that's like that. But, even LegalZoom.com, you hear them on the radio every 5 seconds, They have various different programs for you to set up things like that, too, I believe.
Oh, yeah. But for us, it was as simple as going to the Secretary of State's website, downloading the paperwork, filling that out. If you have some questions, call the Secretary of State's office. They'll walk you through it. And I think it's a $50 initial filing fee, and you probably paid $25 for a notary to notarize all the paperwork before I sent it in, and you're done. You got an LLC. I mean, so it's not expensive. It probably took me 15, 20 minutes to fill out the paperwork, probably 15, 20 minutes to find a notary to get the stuff notarized, and, we got an LLC and we're done. I at this point, I haven't gone beyond having an LLC. My CPA's kind of been watching stuff for the last couple years, and saying, hey, we may look into incorporating here soon just for tax purposes and other reasons. But, mine was a little bit simpler than Exotics by Nature. I still don't have a tax ID number. I don't need one because I don't have any employees. So I'm a sole proprietor LLC, and I file my taxes with my regular taxes. But, as you said, it seems to be becoming increasingly more and more important to file your taxes, ensure that we're doing that, and it's all going to help legitimize our industry as a true industry if people operate it as a business. I mean, I don't think that the goal of the question or anything I've said or anything you said is to scare somebody into that. If you're truly running it as a hobby, then run it as a hobby. But if you're doing anything,
if you're buying $10,000 snakes and producing them and selling them, by the time the price goes down a little bit, $5,000-$7,000 a piece, and you're going to a reptile show and hoping to make cash money and stick it in your safe under your bed or whatever, then that's probably not the wisest way to pursue it as a business.
No, and I mean, if we ever want to grow, and I know a lot of people look at it because they've been around for a long time, and that's, I mean, as good as it gets from a production standpoint as the cattle industry. I mean, those guys have more stroke than is imaginable in D.C., and if we want to get to that point, then whenever USARK or PJAC or any of those people are trying to put together stuff to go present to any of the congressional subcommittees, and when we're trying to address these things, and these guys are trying to pull numbers to say, hey, here's how large our industry is, tax returns in real businesses, if they put a list together, hey, here's 200 businesses we went and pulled, LLCs and S-corps, and here they are, then at that point, anyone that wants to go back and delve into that and look more into it can go find tax returns for these companies and see that it really is an industry. But
yeah, find out that they're messing with a multi-million-dollar a year, industry, if not hundreds of millions of dollars encompassed into the pet industry as well.
Right. No, definitely. But I mean, doing all this stuff, doing it legally, following your permits, and having all that stuff is going to aid us in the future to legitimize the industry as a true industry.
Great. Well, I think that's wonderful advice. Obviously, I've been in support of this type of thing for years. Those of you listening in that already know about my methods and, business ethics, business tactics, know that it's very important, like Tim was saying, to be responsible and to be held accountable for what goes on in this business. And it's ensuring that it has a future and not just a place on a floor full of politicians where someone with a gavel is going to decide our fate, as we've been through here recently the last couple of years with USARK and PJAC. If you don't know what PJAC is, it's the Pet Industry Joint Advisory Council, fighting these politicians' hard pushes towards illegalizing what we do and what we love. So that's great. That's good information. But, all right, well, let's go back to Tim's business a little bit. Lots of people follow you on Facebook and follow you on the forums like BP.net or BLBC, and you've been posting some pictures of a new building that you're working on, and it's something I'm really proud to see because it's really one of those things where we've been through this business together, and we've seen each other's collections grow immensely and to be very successful, and to sit there and see someone build a nice brand new shiny building on their property to, or on a property that they've purchased or whatever, to house their collection and their new business idea. It's really inspiring, and I think a lot of people like to see it. So if you'd like to talk to us a little bit about the details of this new building you're working on, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, it's another one of those things, and Sean and I have joked about it, but it's another one of those things I can blame on Sean. It's funny because I guess to back up a little bit, I'll run quickly through the evolution of my facility. I've got 7 acres here, and when we bought our house, I've got a big giant barn. Actually, my barn is bigger than my house on my property, and I bought that because my wife had horses, and we needed somewhere to keep horses when we moved here. And so living there again, living out in the country, I've got my own well water and a pump. So I had a little pump house, and the initial collection there for a little while, when it was 20 snakes, was easy to keep in the house. That wasn't a big deal. It didn't take up much room. But as it started to grow, and shortly after we got past 20 snakes is when Sean got me to build my first rodent rack. I built that thing, and so the next thing you know, I need more space. So I went and built I tore my old pump house down and built a new pump house and incorporated a snake room into my pump house. So my initial room was 10 foot by 12 foot. And when you walked in the door, I had on the right side was racks with snakes in it, and on the left side was rack with rodents in it. And it wasn't too long after that I ran out of room. So I went right next to that room and built a 12 by 12 onto it, which ended up giving me 22 by 12 feet of total space. And I separated it into 2 rooms, and I put all the ball pythons in one room and all the rodents in the next room. And I guess it may have been another year or so after that, I ran out of room again. So I went into the barn and I took over 2 of the old horse stalls. We had gotten rid of horses at that time, didn't have any. And I poured some concrete in the stalls, built some walls, and built a rodent room over there that was about 12 by 20 feet. Moved all the rodents in there, left all the adult ball pythons where they were in that one room, and put all the baby ball pythons in the other room. Well, it wasn't another year or 2 after that, we ran out of room there. So I went back to the barn again, took over the next 3 stalls, concreted those, built some more walls, moved all the adult ball pythons in there. So now the baby ball pythons took over the initial 2 rooms. The rodents were in their new room, and the ball python main ones were in their new room. And that's where I stand today. But Sean's always joked with me for years and said, man, you know, every time you run out of space, you build a closet. And then you fill up your closet and you build another closet. Why don't you quit building closets? So we kind of got to talking about it a little bit. And
I just figured you were probably just trying to refine your construction skills, that's all. You know, it just seemed like every year you were building a new building, and they were small.
Well, that's what we were doing. And actually the next step was to move in the barn and take over the walkway between both sides of the barn and enclose it. And I don't remember.
About how big was that?
That was going to end up being, it was going to double the size of the main room. So it would, the adult ball python room. So it would have been about another 12 by 30 foot.
Okay.
Section.
So that would have been 1, 2, 3 different built rooms, one of which is a separate building for the hatchlings, and then a whole other room for the rodents.
It would have ended up being 5 different rooms scattered in 2 different buildings, and you know, the 2 buildings are probably, I don't know, maybe 100 yards apart, something like that. You know, so it's a little bit of walking back and forth, and we're still operating in that right now. So my incubator's in my baby room, and my adults are in another building. So, you know, when I have a female lay eggs, I got to pull the eggs, and I got to walk them all the way over to the baby room and put them in the incubator. You know, but at least when I pull babies out of the incubator, they're already in the right room. But, you know, having everything in one building would definitely be nice. So me and Sean would do tons of shows together all the time. So we always had anywhere from 6 to 14 hours sitting in the car one way coming back from a show with each other to yak about everything under the sun. And matter of fact, one of those discussions is how I ended up with Aldabra tortoises. But anyway, that's a different subject. But we got to talking about building stuff, and, you know, one of those trips back from some show, I don't remember which one, and we got to talking, and Sean's like, you know, you're probably going to spend $7,000 worth of materials and all that to build the new room you want to build. You know, and my barn is old. It was on the property when we bought it, so I'm probably not too far from needing a new roof on the barn. So that's going to be another $3,000 to put a new roof on the barn. You know, and then where do you expand when you run out of that room? And, you know, so I kind of started looking at some numbers, and it was $10,000-$12,000 that I was going to have to put into that within the next year or so if I were to build that one extra little room. So, you know, hey, your business has grown, you're successful, you're making money. I do still have a full-time job at the time, so, you know, and I still do today. But everything that I make in the snake business, I put right back into the snake business. I either buy a snake, you know, or, you know, I have to claim it as profit. You know, and the intent down the road is to quit my job and do this for a living. But while I'm still working, I don't need that money. So, you know, Sean and I discussed it on the way back and said, man, why don't you look into a building? So sure enough, you know, I got back and I started looking into some buildings and, you know, sat down after I started talking to a few steel companies and some other pole barn companies locally. And I sat down at that point and tried to figure out, okay, you know, I don't ever want an employee, even when I quit my full-time job, because when I quit my full-time job and have all the time I need to dedicate to the animals, you know, I really enjoy, even today, cleaning my animals and spending time with my animals. So I didn't want an employee. I'm never going to say that I won't ever have one, but I tried to tailor the building to what size building can I build to allow me to grow the collection even bigger. So I want something bigger than what I have, but at the same time, I want it to a certain size that I think I can manage the collection by myself if I fill up that entire facility. And so that's, we came up with 2,000 square feet, and so we're going to build a 2,000 square foot building. Back to the whole topic of this program, of mentoring. My original design for the building had me moving the entire, business into that building, which would mean I was going to move rodents in there as well. And, having watched Sean grow, and, I remember the original shop was one bay, and you got a second bay, and then, we've moved out of the shop, and you're at your facility.
Oh, we went from 900 square feet in 10 years to 4,500 square feet, and then back down to 2,800 square feet, which is where I am now, just to be comfortable.
Yeah. So, I've watched your facility evolve and grow and shrink and move and change and do everything under the sun. And so, in talking, Sean just told me one day, he's like, dude, don't, I've done it. I've been there. I'm there now. If you don't have to and you've got the option to do something different, don't put your rodents in with your snakes because you're going to hate dealing with the smell. And, so we've already evolved the building a little bit and chopped that out. That room's now going to get taken over to give me more space. But, so, essentially we made some modifications to design, and it changes even as it's being built. But we essentially broke ground and started building almost a year ago today. It's funny because we actually, a few hours before we got on here to record this, I got my final electrical inspection done, and I've got my final building inspection tomorrow. So my permit should be closed out tomorrow. And once the permit's closed, where we are now is the building is erect, it's in place, and we've got the office, the incubator, and a full bathroom installed, along with all of the plumbing fully installed. So there's no snake rooms in there as of yet. But as soon as these permits get closed, we'll start building the main, what'll eventually be the adult ball python room. And that room by itself is bigger than all of my rooms combined. So I can essentially right now fit the entire collection in there.
That's fantastic. So from 120 square feet, without an office and stuff, mind you,
yeah, right,
to a 2,000 square foot place in 10 years.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. That's definitely a pretty decent advancement. And I think there's a lot of people out there that will really feel good about hearing that. A collection can still grow. There's still a lot of room for new people. There's still a lot of room for, expansion in your own collection. Mind your own sanity. Like I said, I went from 900 square feet in my first shop to 4,500 square feet and then back down to 2,800 feet because that's where I'm comfortable, but that's also with me running 2 employees now that I'm in a wheelchair. So, we kind of run out of time with this. We've really covered a lot of details, Tim. Was there anything else to that one that you needed to add to the end of that question?
No, me and you could go on for hours. We have a lot of time slot, but hopefully, if anyone gets you any questions, and Sean and I are very close to each other from a space standpoint. We're about 5 miles away from each other, and we talk and see each other all the time. But I guess if anyone has any questions, I'm sure they'll get that to you, and you can get with me and.
Well, I'll tell you what. Even better than that, I'd like to just tell everybody again. This is Tim Bailey from Bailey and Bailey Reptiles, and his website is BaileyReptiles.com, and he's also on Facebook, I believe, under his name, Tim Bailey. So you can look him up there, message him there, send him an email from his website. Of course, Jason, the main host of this show, has ways to get in touch with us both. But man, thank you very much. This has been a really awesome time, and I'm really, it's nice to reminisce, and it's nice to hear of your success.
Well, it's a great show, and I actually can't wait to listen to the flip side, which is the next show, to hear about you and Brian.
Yeah, that's right. I can't wait until next week when I interview my biggest influence, Brian Barczyk, BHB Enterprises. I fondly remember barely being able to see over his table when I met him as a young tweenager, if you want to call me that. I don't think I'd even hit puberty yet at the time. But anyway, that's enough of that. I guess we're going to go ahead and sign out here. Thanks again for listening to Herp Herp Hooray. Thanks again, Tim, for coming on.
Thanks to you, and thanks to Jason for allowing us to do this deal. And
yeah, I really hope it's a wealth of information for those people out there listening. I mean, I know that I love to hear about people, talking about their collection and what they've derived from other people. So I hope that we can give that same thing back to some of the newer people that are around today, trying to get into this whole thing. So, well, thanks again. Thanks for listening to Herp Herp Hooray. This is Sean Bradley, and we're signing off. Thank you very much.